Stepping into a Rolex authorized dealer is like playing a game of chess. The dealer themselves, they know the game so well. They have the white pieces, they make the first move. But in order for you to get to the king, you have to make a few sacrifices along the way. That is like the best metaphor I could possibly think of for this sort of video. So it seems like precious metals have become the hot topic of the time, and many of us don't really understand what's going on. It must be a weird thing being a Rolex watch today. A strange time to live in, because everyone wants you, and even if you're made of steel, you are worth your weight in gold. It's odd. With sales of $10 billion last year, $10 billion. It's clear that Rolex knows what they're doing, even if their business practices are kind of strange. But like with so many of these topics, there is no clear linear way to look at it. It's not a point from A to B. It's very much a branching subject that has many different routes and networks. But we've all been asking why we see so many precious metals offered to us, not just presented by a brand like Rolex, who, let's not forget, they tend to do it every single year. A majority of their launches at most of these shows tend to be a precious metal of some kind. But on a larger scale, it seems almost industry-wide that watches with gold or platinum, some kind of precious metal, maybe a diamond or two, these are becoming the forerunners for many brands. It's just the case that Rolex is the front man, so whenever there is a topic of discussion of this kind of magnitude, everyone tends to point the finger at them. But this is a brilliant case study, and there is some genius behind it. With a lot of these scenarios, it's far better talking about Rolex as a brand holistically, to try and understand the many factors that are involved. Let's start by asking that question that seems to have been thrust into our laps. Is gold a trend now? Are gold and precious metal watches the new must-have? Are people moving away from steel as their first choice and pursuing watches in a more finer metal? Or are brands themselves trying to push us in this new direction, trying to introduce gold, precious metal watches as a new trend on us? That in itself could be a whole video. But step into any boutique today belonging to one of the major players, and it's almost a guarantee that something in precious metal will be offered to you. Guaranteed. Whether you want it or not, that has become the new norm in a lot of cases. Even if it's just a bit of gold in the bracelet or the bezel, it's something up and above the standard, more regular model. And it's not that precious metal watches aren't popular either, because us enthusiasts, we make up a tiny percentage of people who pick up watches at the end of the day. But today, more than ever, it is so relevant to say that the precious metal watch is very much the access card. It's the gateway into a brand. It just hit me as I was preparing this video that the precious metal watch could be interpreted as the passport, the certified passport to indicate that you are a valued customer. And if you commit to these, or to multiple of these with your hard-earned, then you have the right to enter. Because we know the protocol by now. A steel Rolex is near impossible to get from a first interaction, unless you're in that 1% and you're very, very lucky. Brands who have these in-demand pieces, they want to see a spend history. They want to be sure that you are a valuable customer to them. And this sudden influx of precious metals being debuted with nothing special in steel, it's one of the most blatant examples of Rolex steering customers towards an alternative avenue. Like I said at the start of the video, multiple facets to why this was done. I think in a large part it's because the brand is trying to move more upmarket. They're trying to integrate new clientele, ones who have a lot more spending money. The term luxury is almost quantified by precious metal. And as we know, Rolex as a brand is moving away from the more sports-oriented, tool-oriented, professional pieces, and instead fixating on that word for what the luxury watch means. And I would like to think of it as an almost natural progression, that this is where the brand would go. Because they've spent, half a century perfecting what they're able to do, being workhorses, their waterproofness, all the many patents with their designs. And just think about it, when you break down the KPIs, you see a brand that has excellent movements, a brand that utilizes their own foundry, that understands materials better than most. Let's not forget, when it comes to manufacture and building, their tolerances are second to none. Beyond that, from a marketing sense, yes, they have the history and the heritage to talk about. Of course, they have many generations of loyal customers, but they also have some of the biggest campaigns with regards to who they sponsor, the sporting events, the amount of money they pump into advertising alone would make our eyes water. So once you have such a ridiculously solid foundation for manufacture, for precision, for design and history, as well as the fact that you now have advertising coming out of your ears, the next phase to explore really is how can we define this next phase of the luxury watch? So finding that fine intersection of what defines a luxury watch in the modern age, as well as creating the best possible watch for the money. These are high ambitions. Now, to address the reason why we haven't seen anything new really given to us in steel this year, one of the best points of discussion, I think something that was mentioned quite a lot, is that the brand has just created a new factory and they plan on producing 250,000 watches more. The lack of steel that we saw presented could in some way indicate that the brand is planning on producing more pieces in steel, not having to satiate any new demands for new products, but rather focus on the back orders of Pepsi GMTs, of Batmans, of Daytonas, and all the rest. Because there is such serious demand for the pieces that they do have on offer, why make your life even more difficult by creating an entirely new range just to increase demand even further? That's one way to look at it, I guess, in order to satiate demand, but also to introduce an entirely new criteria, maybe an entirely new trend. Precious metals. If we're looking at it from a business sense, it's pretty clear cut. Offering precious metal watches means that you're going to get more money per sale, prices per unit sold. So instead of the new time buyer only paying $5,000 for a watch, instead they're paying $25,000 for the new watch. So in that way, the authorized dealer is happy. They're making better sales for the brand and, they're making more money. As much as we love the romance and the storytelling, it is just pure cold business at the end of the day. But I think the long and short of it is, the reason for this insane influx in precious metals and what we're possibly going to be seeing is that thanks to the ridiculous hype of the early 20s, the grey market flipping, the shady dealings, authorized dealers themselves want a more concrete sign of a relationship with their customers. And the only way they can do that, since demand is so high, is to give them a test. Not a verbal test, not a test on delivering who can deliver the most amount of cupcakes every week when you're stopping by the store. Your sign of commitment is buying something alternative to the norm. So maybe there is a strange date just that not everybody wants, or a sky dweller that is just so overblown in price. Your proof of buying this watch is not only proving to the authorized dealer that you're not just tire kicking, but you're willing to put the money where your mouth is. Not only is it a better business practice for the brand, like I said, increasing their prices per unit sold, but it's also proof that the client is interested in something else and is willing to show it. So walking into an authorized dealer is like a game of chess. They understand the playing field very well. They have the white pieces. They make the first move. But you have to understand that in order to get to the king, some sacrifices have to be made. I love this metaphor. It's brilliant. But it's that commitment to a relationship. It's that wedding ring that the authorized dealers need to verify. And it's using these precious metal watches, these sorts of oddities, as that form of conduit into verifying that the relationship is a real thing. So I'm left asking myself, what is the future if this is the direction that Rolex as a brand is planning on going? Are they going to be dumping stainless steel entirely? Will we see precious metal take up 75% of their roster? Will they give the everyday piece designs to a brand like Tudor to then follow up? It is clear that the brand is trying their best to try to deflate any kind of hype that's surrounding their stainless steel collection because they know it's the most popular line that sells. And the only way for the brand to really do that is to distract the majority with a shiny object. Precious metal. But if Rolex does go so far to almost cull the stainless steel line, then that is disappointing. Because I think all of us know that stainless steel was their backbone. It's something that defined them at the turn of the mid-century. The 1950s, their sports watches became world famous. And even through the 1970s and the 80s, when there was tons of trial and error amongst all brands trying to promote precious metal and gold everywhere, Rolex stuck to their guns and still produced watches in stainless steel with mechanical movements, as well as dipping their toes into the gold pond like the solid gold Submariner, the GMT, the President. So the gold watch is a lot more than just a statement piece to be worn. Yes, it's flashy, yes, it's luxurious, but I think more than ever on a subliminal level, especially now, it is a watch client's wedding ring. It's a sign of commitment to show that you are very much a worthy customer to an authorized dealer, which then validates the reason why you might be on a list for a Daytona or a GMT or, anything that's in steel really. And knowing all of this, Rolex very much pulling the strings, they are loving it because they're making 5 times the amount per watch sold. The truth is, and this is where I see the downfall for a lot of us enthusiasts especially, is that only a small percentage of people are going to be able to afford watches of this kind of caliber. The 1%, they don't care about the price changes. On the other hand, those of us who are watching this video, we scrutinize everything, down to the last digit. And if we know that there is better value to be found somewhere else for 1/5 of the price, that's where we are going to be heading. So it's an interesting turn of events. It might end up being quite dystopian. It might develop into something where the brand completely backtracks and carries on with stainless steel production. Maybe This is just their way of slowing down orders to satiate supply. But as for all manufacturers, it seems like precious metal is definitely taking precedence. We're starting to see them advertised and promoted a lot more. And on a far deeper level, I think the brands are trying to deconstruct the hype for steel and are trying to circle back to what defined a luxury watch 40, 50, 80 years ago. So what are your thoughts on this subject? What is the deal with precious metal watches? What do you think the future is going to hold? Really enjoyed putting this one together. I loved that chess metaphor. That was funny. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. See you in the next one.